Welcome into your Gray Television's Media Day craze. Bailey Burmaster, joined by the sports director of WAFB, Jacques Doucet. Help me out here.
Jacques Doucet.
Thank
That's
you.
okay.
Mouthful for
it's
me.
not John Smith or something. It's a little more complicated.
We are here on Radio Row in Dallas for SEC Media Days, taking over D-Town as all the SEC coaches descend on Dallas for the first time in the history of SEC Media Days, only the fourth time out of Birmingham, Alabama, and this conference is going to look very different with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas. What do you expect from these two Big 12 blue bloods entering the SEC?
Yeah, Bailey, the conference continues to get bigger and better. 2012, they added Texas A&M and Missouri, right? That's been a while, and now we've got a couple of heavyweights in the sport. When you talk about Texas, the Longhorns, and Oklahoma, the Sooners, I know just from the LSU perspective, to have LSU play a regular season finale against Oklahoma in Tiger Stadium is going to be a pretty massive event, I believe. So, 16 teams now in the league. How many more will they add? When I was growing up as a kid, it was always, well, Clemson and Florida State, they would fit perfectly, and that hasn't happened. But every year when we come to this event, it seems like that there's, if not an earthquake, the tremors from the previous earthquake across the changes in college football. And for many years, a lot of things just didn't change in college football. Now they've changed very quickly in a short period of time.
No, that's absolutely right. And, no 16 teams, no more divisions makes for a lot of interesting storylines, of course, this season. We have to, some of those you have to talk about Nick Saban. You cannot talk about SEC Media Days without Nick Saban, who has traded in his whistle for a mic this year. First time he's not coaching in the SEC for the first time since 2006. Kalen DeBoer set to take over. You're going to see a 12-team playoff. NIL and transfer portal are the talks of the town, and something you mentioned that was funny that Commissioner Greg Sankey also talked about earlier was, will more teams come to the SEC? He was pressed on that quite heavily multiple times and kind of doubled down that 16 teams is today and 16 teams is tomorrow. How that remains to be true if the college football landscape continues to move as much as it has, it kind of remains to be seen. But, I think the SEC is something he might be right, is one conference that just remains season after season with its strength of teams.
Yeah, Bailey, I think you're just going to see a bigger separation between your haves and your have-nots. I heard somebody reference, can you remember back the start of 2007 when Appalachian State beat Michigan to start the season? And, people remember Boise State, right, when they played against Oklahoma and had the trick play and won the game. I think that those fall further and further behind, and the powers are just going to continue to rise to the top, especially in the dominance now of the NIL and the money being invested in student athletes and whatnot. I don't know if that is going to be sustainable or not. But, those kind of things are interesting to talk about. You mentioned Nick Saban. As a young whippersnapper, I covered Nick Saban when he was the head coach at LSU way back in the day. You talk about baptism by fire.
Ain't that the truth?
Into this profession. I'd grown up in Louisiana, and I just dreamed if I could cover LSU sports one day. And then I had Nick Saban as the first coach I covered, which, I covered a national championship my third year at the station, which was awesome. So, but he was tough. You could ask him about a beautiful sunny day outside, and he might chew you up and spit you out. So it's interesting to see him now in the media, and from what I've seen early on, he's going to be fantastic. No surprise there.
So today, day one of SEC Media Days, you have LSU, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. LSU, BK, Brian Kelly up on the podium. He's the first one to talk. What have you taken away from just them getting here today and getting their boots wet and whatnot?
Well, he's entering his third season, and the first two seasons, I think the first season I'd give him an A-, B+, inheriting what he inherited from Coach O. Really rough situation. Hit the transfer portal, had some hits in the transfer portal, had pretty much all hits in the transfer portal. Made it to the SEC championship game, beat Alabama in Tiger Stadium, so LSU certainly exceeded their expectations in year one. Year two, I think they had an offense that rivaled the 2019 LSU offense with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and those guys. When you talk about Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and the points they scored, the problem was, and Coach Kelly has talked about it a lot today already, is that the defense was just atrocious. I mean, it could not keep anybody off the field at key times. Certainly, if you look at their three losses, I think two of them you put squarely on the defense. You talk about he referenced the Ole Miss game today, a game in which LSU scored 49 points in Oxford, gave up 55 and lost. He said that loss cost us a shot in the playoff. And so he totally cleaned house, no pun intended. Matt House was the defensive coordinator last year. And so all the defensive coaches from a year ago, for the most part, are gone. He brings aboard Blake Baker, a very young, bright coach from the Missouri Tigers who had been on the LSU staff back in 2021 for only 1 year. Coach O went off the rails and had to be let go, and then Blake Baker went to Missouri. You got Bo Davis, new defensive line coach from Texas. Corey Raymond comes back. Corey Raymond had been on the staff a long time as a defensive backs coach, and now was not retained by Brian Kelly in 2021. So that's interesting. Two guys you kind of let go, and I want you back.
Come back.
So bring them back. So I think the big thing, Bailey, is they're talking about, I think he himself, when he took the job, said, look at year 3. See where we're at in year 3. Mm-hmm. And the offensive line, I think, is the strength of the team. He's got some big, strong men there who have been there for 3 years. Can the defense be any better? And then you've got Garrett Nussmeier now at quarterback, who's entering his 4th year with the program, finally his first year as the clear-cut starter, so to speak. I think the analogy Coach Kelly made today is that when you're the backup quarterback, you're kind of renting somebody else's car or using somebody else's car. And if you wreck it, well, it's not my car. It's not my problem, so to speak. I think he actually said something like, well, you guys would worry about that. And we all started laughing. Guy who makes $10 million a year, probably not worried too much about wrecking his rental car.
Yeah.
The two of us, if we rented one,
we would no longer have jobs.
There'd be a problem. Gray Media would be having a conversation.
They would not be happy about it.
But yeah, that was his analogy. And so now it's his car. Don't wreck it.
Don't wreck it. Before we dive into Garrett, I want to circle back to something you said about this defense. It definitely was, I don't want to say the down part because this is a very strong team, but what do you see from this defensive unit after the lackluster 2023?
Well, the thing we've been talking about for months is what is this defensive line going to look like? Because they had Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo, a couple of guys who I think they had hoped would come back for another season. And both of them decided to go pro. And then there was some very highly publicized misses in the transfer portal when it came to trying to acquire players. And Coach Kelly, in an interview he did with us, saying we're not going to buy players. And what he meant by that was, if I've got Will Campbell making $400,000 a year, who's proven himself, who's going to be top 5 NFL draft pick this year, it's not good for my team chemistry, my locker room, and whatever to give a complete stranger a $1 million deal. To play defensive line. So they missed on some guys there. So I think that's the big question, is how this defensive line is going to hold up. From what I've been hearing from Coach Kelly and some others, they're going to be better than what people think. Mm-hmm. The big question, I think, is the role of Harold Perkins as well. Harold Perkins has been on the team for 2 years. He's certainly been a dynamic player at times. His first year as a freshman, I believe he had 7.5 quarterback sacks, 13 tackles for loss. Last year he had 13 tackles for loss. Again, the quarterback sacks went down, and there was a lot of debate amongst the fans. Is LSU doing the right thing with Harold Perkins? Are they playing him in the right spot? So Coach Kelly today said he'll be back playing inside linebacker again, and that he has put in the work and probably taken his off-season strength and conditioning the most serious he's ever taken it, because now he says he's 225 pounds as opposed to maybe 210 pounds, 215 pounds in the past. So we'll see how that translates.
What do you expect from Blake Baker, guy coming in who was under Coach O, to kind of help make this transition and bring this defense along?
Well, I see a young, bright coach. Somebody, a coach told me that he's been in coaching a long time, and that we can make a big deal about how much the coach knows and his knowledge and this and that. It's about making the guys play and make them want to run through that brick wall over there and hit the ball carrier and tackle. And from what I understand, Matt House was probably the most intelligent defensive coordinator Brian Kelly's ever worked with. But there was a connection that was missed between Matt House and the players he coached last year. A video that surfaced after the bowl win, last year. And so now I think that Blake Baker is, he's a young guy that relates to the players. I think that they will respect him. It won't be a case of, the substitute T-shirt walking all over him type thing. But I think that from what somebody told me, I was chatting with Kevin Falk the other day, LSU's all-time leading rusher, and he said, I can guarantee you Blake Baker is going to maximize Harold Perkins. So that's what we're looking forward to there with Blake Baker and the other coaches.
If you're a Tiger fan, you got to love to hear that. Let's talk about the quarterback, the new car in town, so to speak, Garrett Nussmeier. What can he amount to this season?
Garrett has been a fascinating topic. He's been on the team now. Like I said, this is his 4th year with the team this year, and he has played sparingly here and there. He played pretty much the entire Arkansas game in 2021 in Tiger Stadium. And in that game right there, you kind of saw what Garrett Nussmeier was early. He danced around, ran around, and chunked the ball to the back of the end zone. Jack Besh made a touchdown grab, and it was a Johnny Manziel type play. Then in overtime, LSU got the ball first, and I think it was the first or second play. He threw a fade to the end zone. Arkansas picked it off. They kicked a field goal, won the game in overtime. So that was kind of him. He doesn't like being labeled a gunslinger, although that's kind of.
Is that how you would describe him? You don't want to say yes, but at the same time.
He's a guy that's going to run around.
Okay.
He's a guy that's got a lot of confidence to thread the needle and to force the ball into some tight windows. Jaden Daniels, you don't want to say once in a lifetime player, but in terms of a quarterback who could run, I don't know when we're going to see that again in the near future. I mean, you talk about a guy who had an 80-yard touchdown run against Florida last year. His head wouldn't move. He had such great control of his body and his strides and everything. And so Garrett's not going to do that. He can run a little bit. It's going to be more from the pocket, I believe. We got a chance to see him start the Wisconsin Bowl game last year. Threw for almost 400 yards. I think threw 3 touchdowns. And then late in the game, I guess the most important storyline is that LSU was losing the game and was 98 yards away from the end zone. And he drove them the length of the field, threw a touchdown pass to Brian Thomas to win the game. So that was encouraging for LSU fans going into the offseason to see him do. Now, late in the first half, he ran around and forced the ball that he shouldn't have, and it was picked off. And so those are the kind of things some LSU fans told me the other day. Well, we're just going to have to build in the script for at least 1 interception a game. And I don't know if Brian Kelly agrees with that.
Right. I don't know if you're a coach, you're like, nah, let's clean this up.
Right. But I think they understand. I mean, I think Jaden only threw – did he only throw 4 picks all last year?
Sure, it was something crazy.
I could name them off the top of my head because there were so few, and I think only 1 was his fault. So I think they accept, okay, we're going to throw more interceptions this year, but we're all going to force the ball down the field, and we're going to do some things.
You've been covering LSU for quite some time.
Yes.
Where do guys like Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels rank among all the quarterbacks you've covered during your time covering the Tigers?
1A and 1B. In whatever order. I know there's a lot of LSU fans out there that if you say anything slightly, I don't even say negative, but even like the comparison, like even the conversation, is Jaden better than Joe? I mean, get up in an uproar, Hey, Zeus, Joe Burrow, and to Joe's credit. And
do you have a favorite?
Well, I mean, that whole season was pretty amazing. Our jobs, we don't work on a roof. No. We don't dig a ditch. We've got a pretty great job to work. But it is, you do hard work. But that season was like a magic carpet ride every day. Yeah. It was like the press conferences, the coaches show, the games, the team getting off the bus, everything was amazing. And Joe was the centerpiece of that. Now, look, he was surrounded by great talent as well. But, your quarterback's your most important position. So that was great to cover. Jaden was fantastic as well. And look, as Jack Marucci at LSU told me, Burrow from year 1 to year 2 was like this. And then Jaden was like a rocket ship, he said. It was just like the improvement from year 1 to year 2 was amazing. Yeah.
Was Joe Burrow as great with media as he seems to be now in Cincinnati? Yeah,
he was not a hot take guy. He was not I'm going to say something to go viral. That wasn't him. I think he was pretty restrained. His dad was a coach. And he came from 2 other brothers. He's got 2 other brothers, and so I think they all kind of kept him in check for the most part. He definitely brought a lot of, I guess swag is a very outdated term, but
Riz.
Riz, bling, Riz. Whatever, what he wore and just his demeanor and just above all what he did on the field, the way he played. Now, LSU had not beaten Alabama since 2011, the game of the century, when they went in there in 2019, and Burrow took over the show and pretty much stuck it to him the whole night. And from that I mean, he had done things earlier in the year, the 3rd and 17 at Texas to Justin Jefferson and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the day he truly, became a legend when LSU went to Alabama and finally beat them in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. So Garrett Nussmeier's show from here on out. When you look at this team, I want to look at their schedule. It's a very intriguing schedule for me. They open up against USC in Vegas. You guys going to that game?
Absolutely, we will be there. LSU hasn't won a season opener, Bailey, since 2019, since Joe Burrow was the quarterback of that 15-0 national championship team.
That's interesting.
So
that's an interesting note.
Yeah, in 2020, Mike Leach, rest in peace, at Mississippi State, came to Tiger Stadium and threw for 628 yards, I think, in that funky COVID season when there was nobody in the stands.
Wild.
And then LSU got their teeth knocked out by UCLA in the Rose Bowl in 2021, and then lost to Florida State on a missed extra point in the Superdome, and then last year got boat raced in Orlando by Florida State. So had won a season opener in a long time. So there's a lot of pressure to finally, hey, let's start 1-0 for a change.
When you look at their schedule, what are the games you have marked? I see here, they have Ole Miss at home. They travel to Texas A&M late October, obviously Bama, and then they end the season with Oklahoma.
Yeah, certainly the season opener. You're playing in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just all these crazy Cajuns alone going to Las Vegas.
That's a recipe for disaster. We know that.
Yes. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but I was small chat with Coach Kelly yesterday, and I think he said something like, if we can come in Sunday afternoon and play the game Sunday night, you taking 100 young men to Las Vegas?
That is right.
Yeah, that's
I don't think he'd be alone in that sentiment. I think that would make sense for a lot of coaches in the league.
I mean, LSU football players, whoever, 18 to 22 years old, taking 100 of them to Las Vegas, it could be some work. But no, the Vegas season opener, that's big. And these non-conference season openers and these neutral sites are, I don't want to say controversial subject, but it's still a big subject. I think a lot of fans want us. I grew up on being able to see Ohio State, Florida State, all these different Miami of Florida in Tiger Stadium. Now you're taking that game out of Tiger Stadium, you're playing it somewhere else. But LSU does have a home and home with Clemson. We also heard today Coach Kelly saying he wants to play a game in Ireland at some point. So that's down the road. But the season opener, I think, the Alabama game is just going to lose without Saban in the game. It's just going to lose a lot of that punch, because even the kids in the LSU student section who weren't even born when he was coaching at LSU, they were chanting some things at Nick Saban because he coached at LSU and, went to Alabama, the arch rival, and all that. So, that'll lose its luster a little bit. Ole Miss coming to Tiger Stadium will be a big deal.
Yep.
Lane Kiffin has beaten LSU both times they played in Oxford. He's lost both times they played in Death Valley. So we'll see what happens there, because Ole Miss, I think this is their year. They're thinking this is their year.
Well, that's what I wanted to get at is, do they have the ability to clinch the SEC? And if the answer is no, they got to be one of the 12 teams in the playoff.
You speak about Ole Miss. Yeah. I mean, from what I've heard and what they've invested in NIL and having Jackson Dart back and this roster, and
Lane Kiffin got 65 transfer portal players in the last 3 years?
Yeah, maybe.
They deem him the portal king.
And it's funny when you hear Lane talk about it. I mean, he's just going by the rules of engagement to build his roster, but he doesn't like this either. He doesn't think, and I don't know how you feel, but turning over your roster 50, 60 players every year is not good for the sport, is what he feels.
No, so I played soccer at Oklahoma State, and I've been on panels before NIL was officially through, talking about my perspective, and I think it's great that athletes get what they deserve in their name, image, and likeness. But I think my concern is what you're seeing now is there's no regulations on anything, and it breeds an unfair playing ground, especially when you leave things up to state regulation at the same time.
Yeah.
So
right.
it gets sticky, and I think, don't want to say it, but you got to believe transfer portal and NIL became a big deal of why Nick Saban decided, hey, now it's time to walk away. And I think there's a lot of coaches that don't necessarily want to be college coaches in the sense, because you got to shake hands and kiss babies and do the recruiting, and now it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, Joe Brady, for example, who came to LSU as the offensive whiz kid in 2019. he is exactly what you're talking about. I think Joe Brady and people like that, they have no interest in hopping on planes and flying across the country and trying to talk guys out of leaving the team who are already on your team, re-recruiting your roster, and then, having to go recruit kids and the transfer portal and deal with handlers and all that. They just want to go to a building and coach football.
Yep.
And
Yep.
And that's what the pro game is. Go to your building, coach football, coach on Sundays, Mondays, whatever. You're seeing a lot more of these college coaches say, you know what, I've had enough. And Nick Saban in particular, and it's the old Bill Parcells line.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to cook the dinner, then I need to shop for the ingredients.
Yep.
I need to do the grocery shopping. And when you kind of lose your control to do that to an extent, I don't blame him getting out when he did, because that team last year really overachieved, and they were that close to being in the national championship game.
Ain't that the truth? And it brings me back to, I covered Texas Tech for a few years when Cliff Kingsbury and Patrick Mahomes were there, and that was always the thing with Cliff. He was a player's coach. He loved being around the guys. He cared about football. He wanted it to be nothing about just about football and the guys. But at the end of the day, he didn't care to be on the road and do the recruiting and be in those aspects. And that's ultimately why he ended up switching gears and at that point going to the NFL, but then kind of reverting back to an OC role within the college game.
Did you cover that Texas Bowl against LSU in 2015?
No, I started the year after that.
The year after, okay. Because Mahomes was in that game. And
what did you see from Mahomes?
I was about to say.
Were you like, this kid's got something, or were you like, because people, when he got drafted, people had no idea who he was, and rightfully so. Texas Tech was not a good team. They were not strong. He had no real players around him. It was literally just Patrick Mahomes slinging it.
I think before he got there, there was this feeling that Texas Tech produced stat machines, guys who put up big stats, but they didn't have the physical tools, or they didn't have what it took to play in the NFL. Now, on that LSU defense, there were a lot of guys playing in the NFL, who are playing in the NFL now, your Jamal Adams and whatnot.
Yep.
And I think they scored a lot of points. Texas Tech did. LSU ran away from them. Leonard Fournette trucked that defense.
Yeah.
But Texas Tech did throw some fajitas on the field, the tortillas.
Tortillas,
yeah. When they scored, and I think there was definitely a feeling of, that guy's different. Like Patrick Mahomes, that guy can play. And sure enough, covering the Saints as well, Sean Payton, the head coach of the Saints at the time, was trying to draft him during that draft, and that's one of the big, I guess, what ifs. But then it's also, to me, it's like, well, I think Drew Brees played another 3 or 4 years after they drafted.
Yeah.
So how would you were going to push Drew Brees out the door? I don't think so. So that would have been interesting to watch. But that draft in particular, and then not to go on a ramble,
Go
but
for it.
It put pressure on Leonard Fournette in Jacksonville, because the Jaguars took him before Mahomes, and I think Deshaun Watson also was in that draft. And so it's like, Leonard's had a pretty solid NFL career, but still it was like, well, we should have drafted Mahomes instead, or somebody different.
The things he could do on the football field in college that people weren't seeing was truly remarkable, and I will never forget covering, I believe it was the 2016 shootout game between Tech and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, the quarterback of the other team, and each team was putting up 50-something points.
Yeah.
I shot that game, and I remember going, I think I got 8 miles in that one.
You were looking at your steps that night, yeah.
I was like, they're making me work
steps
for it tonight. No, it was insane. And so, but it was funny because everyone was like, now Patrick Mahomes is a household name.
Yeah.
At the time, it was kind of like, if you watch the Big 12, which most people watch the SEC, let's be fair, Mahomes wasn't on the map.
Well, and it's also, the Big 12 was labeled as a league that did not play defense.
Correct.
It was soft. The SEC was always kind of labeled, more physical intensity.
Yeah.
You guys are playing flag football out that Big 12. You don't tackle and this and that. So, certainly. Let's see, how many? He won 3 Super Bowls.
3 Super Bowls.
And he played in another,
Yeah.
or
lost to Tom Brady, right? Bucks.
Yeah. So how old is he? He's
he is 20.
He's still in his 20s.
27. And they just announced a third baby too.
Wow. Well,
he's got it all going on.
Three kids and 3 rings, huh?
It's a tough life, isn't it?
And now with, I'm not just saying say this to make myself feel better, but people, as they get older, it's different than it used to be. And how long he could play till early 40s or something like
I mean,
that.
Aaron Rodgers is still kicking, and he's coming back from a torn Achilles.
Yeah, I mean, how many Super Bowls can this guy win before
Kirk
it's all
Cousins
said and done?
is getting up there too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Age might just be a number a little bit. I mean, Tom Brady still looks like he could get back out there if he really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, he could be, the new Dos Equis guy, most interesting guy in the world, right? He can just do whatever he wants to do. Hey, I'm going to play football this week. Okay. Yeah. Tom Brady signed with, whoever. You can start one game, get him in the playoffs or whatever. But, I was a little, I don't know if I was surprised that he stayed retired. I thought he could still do it. I mean, it wasn't like physically he couldn't throw the ball anymore.
Yeah.
Like Drew Brees, his arm was shot and he couldn't throw anymore. But
yeah.
So.
Well, to wrap up here, give us your prediction for what happens with LSU this year.
Oh, man, predictions. I saw that today the graphic said that they're 7.9 wins is what Vegas has them at.
Interesting.
I had seen 8, which is 7.9 is basically 8, but I'd seen 9, I thought, and 9.5 maybe in some circles. I think if they don't make the playoff, it's going to be disappointing, the 12-team playoff. Yeah. I think that is the goal. That is the reasonable goal, to make the 12-team playoff this year. I think that they need to go 10-2 in the regular season to ensure that they do that. And I'm just my gut is kind of leaning away from them doing that. I think that they are going to fall more in the realm of 9-3, 8-4, if you ask me today. Now, Channel 9 doesn't ask me to do predictions, and so I always joke about, the weather guys at our station, they've got the worst gig in the world. See, I tell people to score after the game. You don't have to tell them to score before the game. The weather guys tell you it's going to rain tomorrow or not. They're right 95% of the time. You miss it once, and, people want to hit, hear pitchforks and stuff. So, anyway, I think that they're about a 9-win team. Hopefully around that point. So that's what I'm kind of thinking today. I just don't know about this defensive line, and I think the offense will be still very good. But my question, Bailey, is that how much did Jaden Daniels mask? How much did one individual kind of spray some perfume in the corner, to cover up some stuff that smelled a little bit, so.
Do you think that answer is he masked it a little bit?
I mean, if you look at that defense, he won the Heisman last year, so I think he got his credit. But if you look at that team last year, I mean, how many games did Jaden Daniels have to keep the offense scoring and scoring and scoring and scoring to win? I mean, certainly the Florida game at home, certainly the Arkansas game at home, the Texas A&M game at home. I mean, without Jaden Daniels, that team last year could have losing record maybe.
Yeah.
It could have been a 5-7, 4-18.
Could have been very, very different. All right, we're going to take a short break here on your Media Day Craze stream. Jock, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I had a good time.
LSU.
Yeah. Look forward to the week and chatting some football with everyone.
Yes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to your Gray Television Media Day craze. I am joined now by John McDavid, SEC coordinator of all the football officials. You got the big job tasked. Spent many years officiating. Tell all the conferences you've been a part of, your history of just how you ended up here with the SEC.
Well, good afternoon, Bailey. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you today. I played college football and through an injury, not in any big football program, but through an injury, my career was over before my junior year even started. And my senior year, I was doing a variety of things on football Saturdays to earn some extra money. And one of those things was a ball boy during the game. And during one of those games my senior year, I said, you know what? When I'm done here and I fly back to Southern California to go start my career, being an official might be a great way to stay close to the game. So that's exactly what I did. I started my officiating in 1989 in San Diego. Was working high school and junior college football out in in California. California doesn't really have a lot of D2, D3 programs. Junior college football is the big thing out there. And then through my job, moved to Washington, D.C. in 1995. Got into Division II there. We used to call it 1AA, now FCS football. I got into the Big East Conference in 2001. And I moved from the Big East over to the SEC. My last year in the field was 2019, and the reason it was my last year in the field after the 2019 season, the position of coordinator for Southeastern Conference football became open. I had some individuals talk to me that maybe I would be interested in doing that because it wasn't obvious to me at first that that's what I wanted to do. And next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. Next thing you know, I'm a commissioner. I'm a coordinator of officials for the SEC.
Do you miss being on the field at all?
I get that question a lot. In fact, I just we had some good friends from Washington, D.C. that were visiting us just 2 or 3 days ago. No, and it's because I'm still doing something related to football officiating. With my last years on the field, probably the biggest reward I received was I was a referee. I was a crew chief. It was the leadership of the crew that is what I really identified with, and it was giving me not just fun, but like I said, the reward in doing it. Well, coordinator officials is, guess what? He's this crew chief of many crews, and we have not only SEC football officiating as part of our program, we also have Sun Belt officiating and the Southern Conference officiating. So we'll have next week in Birmingham, Alabama, our preseason clinic, which will be a room of about 270 officials, both on field and replay across those 3 conferences.
Okay. So my question is, in your opinion, what is the hardest part about officiating?
The hardest part.
I feel like it could be a couple things.
It's your ability to react to diversity. It's your ability to react to pressure. It's your ability to, in the context of the game, football is a unique sport in that it's not like ice hockey that I know you're a fan of, or basketball where largely the balls or the puck is flowing consistently, right? Football is a series in college football, 180 plays on average. And it's your ability to focus in the moment, forget about what may have happened earlier in the game. There's plenty of pressure that's coming down on top of you. You're conscious of where you are and what the ramifications are, the decisions you're making, and how do you deal with that? And, we can go look at younger officials, younger in terms of experience, working a high school varsity game maybe, or working a Division II, Division III game. And you really don't know how they're going to react in front of 80 to 100,000 people until you actually put them in front of 80 to 100,000 people. So I think that would be the most difficult thing. Can you think clearly, not succumb to the pressure, and keep focus? That is the big thing. It's easy to get distracted for 3.5 hours inside those stadiums when these games are going on.
Before we talk about the 2024 season, maybe new rules and regulations, what is a day like today for you at SEC Media Days in Dallas?
I've probably gotten the question a couple of times. I see people that I know go say hello, and they say how are things going, and my response is, if things aren't going well during media days in July, things are really, really, really broken.
That's the truth, isn't it?
So it's first and foremost a reminder that football season is just around the corner, right? It's certainly it's now. I used to be my advocation in officiating. It's now my vocation, right? It's what I do for a living, but it's also something that's brought joy to not just me, my entire family. I have children that all went to big football schools. I have a wife that loves the game just as much as I do. On football Saturdays, I will go to the SEC office into our video center to watch all the games, and my wife will stay home and have 2 TVs up in the family room watching games all day long. So it's also a chance to see a lot of people that are, peers and partners, that you haven't seen in a while. And particularly if you're talking about individuals that are related to the schools, to the teams, instead of having a conversation in the crucible of a Saturday inside the fall, you get to have a conversation with them in the off season and catch up with them about their families or whatever the case may be.
What is the prep process like for officials during this time as we gear up? I mean, football season's here in a short few weeks.
It's really transformed over, let's say, the last 2 decades. When I was still in the field earlier in my FBS career, there was a pronounced period of time where you took off. Let's say it was January to April. Maybe you were working some spring scrimmages in April, but you largely took that period of time off. Now it's almost around the calendar. So what are the things they're prepping? They're looking at game film to sharpen the judgment, the framework of judgment they use on what is or isn't a foul. They're getting into the rule book, making sure they know the playing rules. Everyone thinks they know the playing rules until there's 2 fouls and a change of possession to turn it down, and you ask the question, all right, what happens now? Well, the officials need to know the answer to what's going on. They need to keep physically fit. Physically fit is 2 things. You physically look good on the field, right? Because perception is reality. But you also need the stamina, right? And mobility to get around the field. It is demanding. We don't necessarily move as much as, let's say, a basketball official or a soccer official, but we are on the field for 3.5 hours. And particularly in the month of September in the South, it's quite hot. So those are the 3 things that you're doing quite a bit to get ready for when we welcome them all in Birmingham next week.
You talk about watching plays, what's a foul, what's not a foul. Do you look at the more controversial plays from the season prior or maybe years prior to just go over things and make sure everything's as crisp as it possibly can be? Because no matter what happens, it is football. There's a lot to be played. There's going to be a call here or there that always you see it pop up on social media. Everyone's debating about it. Do you guys sit down and look at those pretty analytically?
Yeah, we would not shy away from looking at a controversial play if there's a learning moment in there, right? I'll tweak your question a little bit.
Go for it.
What we try to stay away from is, let's say there's a controversial play, but when you look at the 4 or 5 camera angles that are available, it's what we call a tweener. Maybe it's a foul, maybe it's not. Or let's go get 50 officials, have them look at it, and if you come up with 30-20 or 25-25, that's not a good piece of material for training and development purposes, because there's not a black and white judgment or lesson that can be taught for that particular play. So we'll stay away from that one. But if we kick a play, it's a low light, right? It's controversial, but there's something to be learned from it. Absolutely, we'll use it. I officiate lacrosse as well, believe it or not, and I'm still doing that.
Men's
lacrosse. I started doing high school. The local lacrosse officials in the Washington, D.C. area realized what I did in the fall, and they tried to get me to come out.
Okay. They roped you in.
And when my youngest finally graduated from high school, I actually started doing it, 2019. And, I still get what I'm doing there, right? But I'm sorry, I forgot the question that you asked me.
No, we were just talking about looking at things analytically and whatnot.
Yeah, it's in football. I lost my train of thought. I'm absolutely
You're
sorry.
good.
I was talking about we wanted to make sure there's a learning moment in a particular play. We want to stay away from things where it's not black and white. We talk about that all the time. If I'm doing my job as a coordinator real well, if I'm doing a good job next week for the material that we put together, I put things up there that make it as black and white as possible on what we want as a foul and what we don't as a foul. Now, that being said, I can't get rid of all the gray.
Yeah.
Right.
There's gray in every aspect of life. It's
pass interference is a great example. We're no longer saying contact between offensive player and defensive player is a foul, right?
Yep.
It's got to be material restriction, right? And what's material restriction? You can get into gray pretty darn quickly there.
Well, so I want you to break down a little bit for fans this season any new rules or regulations that they should be aware of for 2024, but I want to get to the one I'm most interested in, and then I'll let you kind of take the reins on anything else. Is that a penalty?
She's giving the horns down signal. You know, I believe it or not, I was asked this question probably 10 times last year.
Because it's a big, okay, so full disclosure, we have not talked about this. I'm a Big 12 girl. I played soccer at Oklahoma State. I love a horns down.
So it would fall under, if it is a foul,
okay,
it would fall under the part of the rule book that talks about unsportsmanlike conduct.
Okay.
And what I ask my officials to do when evaluating a potential unsportsmanlike conduct, they need to make sure they can get it into one of three buckets.
Okay.
Is it taunting? Is it making a travesty of the game?
Okay.
Or is it otherwise a compromise on our ability to manage the game, right? So a horns down signal, if it's observed by one of our officials, it's going to be situationally or contextually evaluated, and it's got to be in one of those three buckets. If I am an opposing player that just scored a touchdown and I'm running up the sideline with my teammates, and I give a horns down signal amongst us, not directed at an opponent, and it's not taunting, right? I ask my officials, if you're trying to, what's a travesty of the game? It needs to be something that offends the senses, right? It almost needs to be, if you take that particular act, not necessarily horns down, but something that maybe it's potentially a travesty, if you take it out of the context of a football stadium and go do it in the middle of a parking lot or in a shopping mall,
is it a problem?
Would people find that offensive, right? If the answer is no, then it's probably not making a travesty of the game.
No, I mean, if I'm running around the streets of Dallas doing horns down, maybe, depending on who you catch.
Contextually,
right? Who you catch. But, I mean, I feel like what you're saying, and you tell me if you would call it or not, Carson Beck rushes in a 5-yard touchdown, horns down to the fans, nothing crazy, just a little turns around, goes back to the sideline. You calling that or no?
Probably not, as you described to me. Now, the third bucket is it otherwise compromising our ability to manage the game? Is it the 10th time he's done it?
Okay.
And is it creating, higher temperatures on the field because of it? It's a little bit different context, right? Yeah. I've come up with this framework because we hear all the time that fans, teams don't want officials inserting themselves into the game needlessly. Let's let the two teams settle it. Well, guess what? When you put an unsportsmanlike conduct foul flag down on the ground, it's 15 yards and potentially a first down for the offense. Guess what? We just inserted ourselves into the game. So let's make sure it's something that is a majority reasonable people can agree. We just don't need that in our game.
Absolutely.
By the way, we have things like the gator chomp. We have things like the shark fin, at one of our schools.
It was just, I think the thing about horns down, especially in the Big 12, it became such a talking point when they decide it could be a penalty that then you almost saw it ramp up even more because people just like to be petty, for lack of a better word. And I think that's the question I've gotten a lot, is it going to be a penalty in the SEC? I'm like, now I know. Now we know how it is.
Well, you could probably guess. I don't get far using words like petty, so I don't use petty. That's not in my vernacular, right?
Right?
No, I have to be empathetic. I have to listen to our teams. But I think everyone can relate. In fact, it's more than I think. I've used my description of how we're going to evaluate unsportsmanlike conduct for 3 or 4 years now with our athletic directors, not just in the context of horns down, but in a lot of different situations. And, I'll give you an example. We had a game during my first year as a coordinator was the pandemic year 2020, and we had a game where a player took one of his opponent's shoes and tossed it downfield about 15, 20 yards, right? That was making a travesty of the game, right? And I got a phone call about, is that a foul? Yes, it's a foul. Well, why is it a foul? And I walked them through the progression of what I just talked about. And when I had that conversation, the person said, all right, I can accept that, right? It wasn't a ad hoc real-time decision by an official. We just shouldn't allow that. It was in the context of something we've talked about in the past of, is it taunting, is it making a travesty of the game, or is it compromising our ability to manage the game?
What other rules, regulations should fans be aware of going into this season?
The big thing that they're going to notice, and my guess is it's going to be being talked about by our television partners on air talent, is that we're allowing 2 big pieces of technology to be used now on the sidelines. Technology largely resembles what's been allowed in the Sunday game in the National Football League, but now it's a part of the college game. The first is the ability to have a direct radio communication between the coach and one player on the field for his team. On offense, it's typically going to be the quarterback. On defense, it may be they're a linebacker or a safety or whatever that team decides to do. The Southeastern Conference is using exactly the same technology that the National Football League is using. So it's this technology that's quite proven, right? It doesn't affect my officials really that much. The only thing it really affects us is that we need to, just like what we see on Sundays, there's going to be a unique green sticker on the back of a helmet that has a radio in it.
Yep.
And we need to make sure that there's only one radio set on the field at a time. But other than that, it's something that goes on the sideline. It doesn't really involve us as officials. Think about the coach headsets that have been there for decades, right? Same thing, right? We don't really get involved with that. The second big technology insertion that's now a permissive rule under the NCAA football playing rules is the tablets. Commissioner Sankey talked about that this morning in his address. And they're allowed now to have full motion video, which is a difference, by the way, from the National Football League. Believe it or not, the National Football League is using the sideline tablets to still look at still pictures, still photographs. They don't have video. Our teams are allowed to have a video feed from the broadcast that you're watching at home, as well as two coach video cameras. One is what we call the All-22, the high 50, and one from the end zone. They're allowed to be looking at that. What they're not allowed to do is otherwise have some analytics running in the background or be able to bring up game film other than the one that they're in at that particular time. But they're allowed to use that now on the sidelines.
As a fan of college football, how much do you like the addition of the headsets and the iPads to just kind of evolve the game for the college level?
I don't know, Bailey, if I have a strong opinion on there, except for this, right? I'm not predicting anything here, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that the coaches wanting to maximize use of particularly the radio slows the game down, right? And if it does what does it do to tempo of the game? Do we run less plays per game? I think, and not only myself, but the individuals that are responsible for the well-being of the game, they want plays out of our game on average, right? Instead of, we had about 179 plays per average, 178 across FBS last year for the 2023 football season. At the same time, the National Football League had 154 plays per game, right? For the health and safety of the athlete, we'd like less plays in the game. Does the technology slow the game down and take plays out of the game? No, that's not the intent of adding the technology, but is it an ancillary effect that it has that ultimately, in John McDade's opinion, would be a positive.
All right. Well, thank you, John McDavid, for joining us here
Absolutely,
on Gray
Bailey.
Television's Media Day Craze. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to have more coming up. Welcome back to Gray Television's Media Day Craze. Bailey Burmaster, Rick Henry, and Debo Williams joining us, getting some help from South Carolina. What are days like today for you, Debo? Do you enjoy these days, talking around, meeting with media?
Honestly, I do, man. One of my goals is, I want my own TV show, like an Ellen or Oprah, and I just want to bring people on for them to tell how they went from 0 to 100. How did you become successful, So I honestly love it. Sure.
So what fascinates you the most about people?
Just that everybody comes from somewhere, and we all have to prevail and put in the work to get to where we're trying to go.
Obviously today, the day one of SEC Media Days, just what are your expectations for South Carolina this season?
I expect a SEC championship and a national championship. I always expected it. I expected it last year. It didn't go the way it was supposed to. Now we got to come back. We got to go back to the drawing board like we've been having. We got to execute.
Sure. Hey, Debo, if we get that talk show, I want to be one of your guests, okay? So I'm signing up right now. I want to be number one.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, well, tell me, what are some of the wildest questions you've been asked today?
Yep. So it's one question about which animal do I think I could take, like the biggest animal I could take. And I said one like an ape, Would say a gorilla, but I ain't going to play like that. But yeah, I would say an ape. I feel like I'd throw an ape around, give him a couple body shots,
Okay, last year didn't go as the way that the Gamecocks wanted to. Have you used that as inspiration to get ready for 2024?
For sure, because what happened last year was unacceptable. We got a championship standard, so not even being bowl eligible, that's unacceptable, and we're not even talking about bowl games. We care less about that unless it's a championship bowl game, so that's what we want for.
Do you think that folks are overlooking the Gamecocks because you finished 5-7 last year? You lost a very good quarterback in Spencer Rattler. So does that make you angry when you hear some of these predictions about the Gamecocks being near the bottom of the SEC?
It used to, but your hard work will make room for you. And so when we start dominating, it'll show, and we don't have to say anything. It'll just show, So I'm not worried about what other people got to say. I see why they're saying that. We're going 5-7. You just got to be a realist. And now we got to come in and dominate this year.
You lost Spencer Rattler at quarterback. You have Lenore Sellers, redshirt freshman. He got to see some game action last year. Now, when I look at Lenore, and I've been following the Gamecocks since the 1960s, and I think he has the strongest arm of any Gamecock quarterback I've ever seen.
Wow.
What kind of problems does he present for defenses?
He presents a lot of problems because if you try to game plan him for the pass attack, he'll pick you apart in the running game. If you try to game plan him for running, he'll pick you apart in passing. So him being a dual threat, how can you stop that, So I know he's going to be just fine. He's going to put it all together, and he's going to be something to wreck with, man. He's going to be a problem.
Okay, this team has a lot of new faces, but you have a lot of experience on defense. What can we expect from that side of the ball?
Nothing but veteranship, man, and I'm looking for complete domination. I've been saying, I want donuts. I've been telling the defense, I want donuts. I want 0 on the scoreboard, man. You want to be one of those historical defenses, well, you got to shut everybody down, So that's what we're going for, and I know we can do it.
How many guys do you have on the USC team?
I want to say 115.
Only 3 get to come to SEC Media Days. That is every year. What does that mean to you that Coach Beamer has the faith and confidence in you to bring you here?
Yeah, it's a huge blessing. This is actually one of my goals coming in my freshman year and seeing the top guys being able to go every year. And I'm just thinking in my head, I want that to be me one day, So for it to see it come into fruition, it's a blessing, to have the respect of the coaches and my players and my teammates. It's just a blessing. Last year I was named captain, and I was just so happy because you put all that work in, you show your teammates that I'll die on that field for you, man, and I truly mean that, and they gravitate to that.
When you look at the 2024 schedule, we've got some teams coming to Columbia that haven't been to Williams-Brice in a while, and also you get to go on the road for some very interesting road games. Is there a game or a couple of games that when you look at the schedule, you said, hey, it's going to be pretty cool to play against that team?
Yeah, for sure. We got 2 new college teams, but I'm not looking forward to playing anybody. I want anybody who comes to play us, I want to dominate, but it don't matter who it is. It could be an NFL team. It don't matter. So, but
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
you good.
Do teams, as players, when the schedules come out, do you look at it and go, ooh, yeah, I like this? Because I look at your schedule and I go, it's kind of mid-season gauntlet. You have Ole Miss, you're at Alabama, you're at Oklahoma, and then you have Texas A&M. Yeah. I'm going, okay, I know by week 5 or 6, we got to buck up.
Yeah, I feel like some players, some teams do that. Me personally, I don't care who it is. I honestly just show up. They tell me who we playing the week before, and I'm watching film like a madman. But before that, I don't care who it is.
You talked about goals last year. SEC coming to SEC Media Days is one of them. Now you're here. What are your goals for yourself this season?
So last year, I came into the season, obviously won the SEC championship and the national championship. But individually, I wanted to have 100-plus tackles and be first team All SEC. I was able to accomplish those things, and we weren't able to accomplish the team goals. So the team goals come into this year as well: SEC championship, national championship. I'm just going to keep praising it. I'm going to keep saying it, and it's going to happen. But also, I'm going for the big buckets this year. Best linebacker in the nation. Getting
the vibe for this team and what you guys are bringing to the 2024 season, what adjectives would you use to describe the vibe of this team right now?
I would definitely say we're ready. As far as like just we're hungry, we're starving. Like we need this. This is for the community. This is for Columbia, our town, our city. And better days are coming. It's here now. So it's time to make it happen, you know.
You know, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, going to have more eyes on the SEC than ever before. What kind of message will the Gamecocks send to the rest of the country this season?
That we're a force to be reckoned with, for sure. We coming to win, man. So, and like all the other teams coming to win as well. So that's all I got to say. I'm just worried about winning. I'm not really worried about what other teams think of us or anything else. I'm just worried about us and what we need to do to win.
All right. Hey, sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me. Devo, thank you for joining us. Rick, thanks for tapping in from Columbia. We're going to see what South Carolina is able to do, but we're going to take a short break from your Media Day craze, and we'll be back in a short few.
Thank you.
Welcome back into Gray Television's Media Day Craze. Bailey Burmaster, and I'm now joined by Gary Stoken, the president of the Peach Bowl. Gary, thanks for joining us and being here in Dallas, D-Town for SEC Media Days.
Well, I tell you, this is when college football season starts. When you come to SEC Media Days, you know it's right around the corner. And we're so blessed to have just a tremendous Aflac kickoff game this year with number 1 Georgia against number 15, and some people have said number 9 Clemson start the season, and then to have a CFP playoff game, the SEC championship, and the national championship game. 4 games with all teams ranked. The lowest team ranked would be 15 in all those cases. So great way to start the college football season, great way to end it in the capital of college football, Atlanta, Georgia.
It is absolutely insane. The matchups, I love how far out they are, but then they come around and they're still great as ever. What do you expect from this Clemson-Georgia game to come in the Aflac Kickoff Bowl?
You know, going through Radio Row here at SEC, it's kind of interesting, the talks. You know, when you look at, both Clemson and Georgia, there are unlike a lot of programs in the country right now, which mainly are developed through transfer portal. Both Georgia and Clemson have made high school recruiting and development of their players cornerstones of their teams, and both have been successful. 4 out of the last 8 national championships are Dabo Swinney and Kirby Smart teams. So great success by great coaches. We could set a record in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the turnout we're going to have.
Do you anticipate that, just with, the fan bases that Clemson and Georgia pack, obviously being the local team?
So many alumni in Atlanta, easy drive, and both teams are fired up for the beginning of the season. So it's a great way to kick off the college football season.
What is this year's kickoff for a cause?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
We were founded in 1968 as the first bowl for charity. So we've kept that a big part of our mission. We're the number 1 charitable bowl game in the country. We've given $63 million to charity since 2002. This year, we hope to raise somewhere $200,000, $300,000 to give back to Aflac Cancer and Blood Disorder Center at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We've given $22 million over the last 5 years. Aflac's given $167 million to create the Aflac Cancer and Blood Disorder Center. We, through Peach Bowl Inc., now have 15 trials in 5 states in 4 different hospitals, 4 hospitals in 5 different states, finding cures and trials to eradicate childhood cancer, and that's our ultimate goal. Use college football for the greater good.
And that's amazing, and it's definitely the right place to do it in SEC country. What does the future look like for Aflac kickoff games with SEC connection?
Yeah, that's a great question. Next year we have 2 games. So we'll have Tennessee, Syracuse, and Virginia Tech, South Carolina. So we're set there. We're negotiating right now for 25. 26 and going forward, we're negotiating with CFP, hopefully to stay a part of the new playoff with the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
Yep.
But from a kickoff game standpoint, we're waiting to see if the SEC is going to go to 9 games, which they could potentially do in conference play in 2026. That would shrink the inventory available for neutral site games. So we just have to wait and see past 25, 26.
How much does all this college football realignment really, if it even does, influence the bowl games, so to speak, and at the end of the year, especially with the 12-team playoff coming into play? I mean, Greg Sankey was actually pressed on it today about, 16 teams is today and tomorrow, but is that to tomorrow, or what's to come, because the college football landscape is changing so much? How much do you anticipate, the bowl games to change in the future with how much is?
Yeah, we'll learn a lot over these next 2 years. We're still in the last 2 years of our 12-year contract. So this year we'll host a quarterfinal, which means the top 4 conference champs will get byes. More than likely, we're probably going to get the ACC champ, but we'll learn a lot. Next year, the last year of the contract, we'll host the semifinal game, and then the new contracts will start in 26. Whether the commissioners and the presidents decide to move past 12 teams, remains to be seen.
As a football fan, are you a fan of the 12-team playoff? Do you like that it expanded, or would you rather kept it 4?
I think what college football will go through, being the number 2 sport in America, will be an elevated growth because of the 12-team playoff. And the reason I say that is you have more TV networks now broadcasting the game. You have NBC, ABC, ESPN, CBS, and Fox, and some streaming, all invested in college football. That's only going to raise the number of games and the number of people that watch. With a 12-team playoff, you're going to have more teams still with an opportunity to play in a playoff through October and November. Whereas with a 14 playoff, if you lost a game in September, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? So we could see teams with 2, maybe even 3 losses playing this 12-team playoff. So I think you'll see higher viewership on TV because more networks are showing it. I think you'll see more attendance because there's going to be more teams in the hunt longer. And that'll only elevate college football, which is now the second most favorite sport in this country, only behind the NFL.
And going off of that, especially being based in Atlanta, what can you say about Atlanta being this almost epicenter for college football? I mean, it helps the Georgia Bulldogs are in Athens, but the Benz repeatedly is hosting SEC championships and big games and Aflac kickoff games.
It was one of the strategies when I took the job in '98 that we wanted to make Atlanta the capital of college football. We went out and got the College Football Hall of Fame and moved it to Atlanta from South Bend. We created the kickoff game format to start the season in Atlanta with a mega event like Georgia and Clemson. Mm-hmm. We helped bring the SEC championship game after its first 2 years in Birmingham. The Peach Bowl helped bring it to Atlanta and sold tickets for them. So all this has been the culmination of a strategy because we're inherently in a college football hotbed with most of the alumni bases of ACC and SEC schools live in Metro Atlanta. It's an easy drive for the SEC and ACC schools. So we're just inherently built that way. So we took all those ingredients, put them together, and I think that's one of the reasons why the CFP commissioners and presidents gave us the opportunity to join the CFP in 2015.
What do you make that Atlanta will be the first city to host a college football national championship for the second time?
And I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
I think they had great success in 18. It was a great game, but everything else went well because Atlanta's just built to host mega events. You're going to see next year the Major League Baseball All-Star Games in Atlanta. The next year the World Cup's in Atlanta. We'll get a Super Bowl probably in 29 or 30. Mm-hmm. We'll get the NCAA Final Four coming back. So, we're just blessed to have 16,000 hotel rooms downtown, all within walking proximity of the great facilities like Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Mm-hmm. A corporate community as well as a government community that get it, that get sports, they're willing to support it, as well as work together to make big events come off most effectively. So we're very blessed in Atlanta, and we're happy and proud to be a part of it and happy to create events like the Aflac kickoff game, be a part of the playoff going forward, and be a part of the college football landscape.
Yeah, well, sports are never slowing down in Atlanta, and college football will continue to keep being better and better. What do you expect from the matchup of that Clemson-Georgia game?
Well, two interesting teams. Georgia obviously is coming back with a lot of people, both offensively and defensively, even though they had a lot of kids drafted. Clemson's defense is going to be one of the top defenses in the country. I think the key is going to be Klubnik, the quarterback at Clemson. Yeah. Will he step up? He's had 1 year under his belt now. He's a five-star high school quarterback. Can he take Clemson to the next level against the top-ranked team in the country in Georgia? Sellout game, raising a lot of money for charity. So it's just we're very, very blessed to be a part of it, and we can't wait. We're ready for it tomorrow.
I'm worried because, after Georgia dropped that SEC championship game to Alabama and, ultimately missed out on the Final Four, I look at the Georgia Bulldogs and I'm going, they're going to come with some serious vengeance this season.
Well, their goal is to play 4 games in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The first game in the Aflac kickoff game, the SEC championship, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl quarterfinal, and then the national championship game.
Can you imagine 4 games in Atlanta, your city. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Georgia. They do some crazy things that go down in the history books. I don't believe it would be any different this season much there.
They can make it happen.
They definitely can. All right, Gary Stogan, thank you for joining us to talk about.
Great to be with you.
Oh, we definitely enjoy it. We'll let you go down on Radio Row and meet with all the people. We're going to keep pushing here on Media Day Craze for Gray Television. Stick with us. We will be back with a lot more coming up. We're going to talk about the other teams in the market that we can talk about. Obviously, you had South Carolina take the podium, Brian Kelly. So we will hopefully have more for you just around the corner. Stick with us. Welcome back to Gray Television's Media Day Craze. Bailey Burmaster, Rick Henry, and Doc Holliday join me. We're going to ride you out here all the way to the end of this stream, and we're going to talk about everything SEC. Let's start with the new look of this conference. Obviously, the Blue Bloods from the Big 12, Oklahoma, Texas join. What do you make of the SEC now that there are no more divisions and you have teams that are powerhouses like Oklahoma and Texas joining?
Well, like I tell people, with Oklahoma and Texas coming, there's no doubt the SEC is the strongest, baddest conference in the land. And I was talking to someone yesterday who covers Texas. You know, he says the fans, they're all excited. I said the best advice I can give you is bring it every week. Because if you don't bring your A game in this conference, you're going to get beat.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to it because every week you're going to have blockbuster matchups.
Yeah.
And that same thing I said, you got a big boy conference. SEC was already a big boy conference. Then you add two programs, Texas and Oklahoma. They've been big boys for a long time. So now you can't take any weeks off in the SEC. You really couldn't take any off anyway. But now you got Texas and Oklahoma coming in, and now no division. So it's the top two teams make it to the SEC championship game. So, hey, what can you say about that, man? You got to be on your P's and Q's from day one.
So maybe I'll be the negative Nancy of the group because I'm a Big 12 baby. Played soccer at Oklahoma State. Okay, so I'm familiar with OU and Texas. And every year, and you probably know this paying attention to football, every year it's like, Texas is back. They're going to make a splash, and then they don't. Now, last year was an exception. I think we would all agree, right? And OU has always been the dominant powerhouse of the Big 12. But it's different. Things are different. Brent Venables still kind of getting his footing a little bit with OU. Texas, Steve Sarkisian has really right the ship. Quinn Ewers really helping everything there. But do you think both of those programs are able to find success in this first year in the SEC? Or do we think there's going to be a little bit of growing pains?
Well, it depends. What will you define as success in the SEC for those two teams? Is success contending for the conference championship, making the playoffs, or maybe, having to settle for maybe 8-4, 9-3 in the regular season? So I think success for them would be competitive. Don't come in here and you have some games where, it's a 30 or 40-point loss. You don't want that. You want to be competitive and be able to put a scare, hold your own against teams, like Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss. So I think if they come in and they show, hey, we belong, we're not going to get pushed around, we're going to put a scare into some people and say, hey, look out, maybe not this year, give us a year or two, and we're going to be right up there, fighting to be the king of the hill in the SEC.
Yeah, and you make a good point, Rick, because what are the expectations? How do you determine what success is? Your Texas and Oklahoma, it's not like you're two scrubs coming into this conference.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're not going to be happy with 8 wins.
I mean, the fan base probably won't be happy with 8 wins.
I don't think an athletic director would be, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, if you're Texas or Oklahoma, you're like, hold on. I know, I understand, and we understand what the SEC is, but you all have to understand who we are and what we are as well. Now, if you're Texas or Oklahoma, we understand how they've been playing, but you have the SEC teams, they're top heavy, and you should be able to compete in the bottom half, but if you're Texas and Oklahoma, you do not want to be in the bottom half of the SEC, especially in your first season.
Another massive storyline of this SEC Media Days is Nick Saban. Nick Saban has hung up his whistle, taken a mic. He's one of us now. Who would have ever thought? But he's not coaching in the SEC and SEC Media Days for the first time since 2006. What do you believe Saban's impact now can be on the SEC as a voice, as someone who is no longer in it but has been a part of it?
Well, whenever Nick Saban opens his mouth, people listen. Yeah. They pay attention. So whatever causes that he wants to put out there and support or not support, people are going to pay attention. But given his longtime history in the SEC, he's going to support things that are going to be in the best interest of the SEC, not necessarily the rest of college football. So I think it'll be kind of interesting to see just
what he hangs his hat on.
Yeah, just how much he's out there and how active he is. So
He's the godfather. He's the godfather of Alabama football. He's the godfather of SEC. You know, once Nick Saban opens his mouth, everyone listens. So he probably, might need to sign a contract with the SEC to be their PR person because he's on ESPN. And he's going to speak everything good, SEC, everything good, Alabama. But he deserves the right to, when he opens his mouth and he talks, you all listen to what he has to say. When I heard him say they asked him for a credential earlier today, that was hard for me to believe, man. It's hard for me to believe that.
No.
Come on, Nick Saban,
that was
it.
a bad joke.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it had to be.
It had to be a bad joke because I think anyone that sees Saban, yes, sir, wherever you want, you just go. You just go wherever you want. But it's funny because you said hang his hat on stuff. And when he talks, people are going to listen. I think a lot of it is going to be the discussion around recruiting calendar and NIL and how that's been affecting the game. It's still very early in this process, but what do you make of the state of college football now with players being able to capitalize on this stuff?
Well, I think it's long overdue. I thought it was just a sin when you look at how much money college football brings in, not only for the schools and the coaches with their high salaries, but the whole economy of the towns. I know like in Columbia, South Carolina, when the Gamecocks are playing, hotels are full, gas stations, restaurants, malls. Everyone is making money except the people who really make it possible, the players. Yeah. So NIL isn't going away. Of course, there need to be some modifications because, some people are, anytime big money is involved, some people will try to bend the rules a little bit. So you have to have some well-defined rules that everyone is going to be playing by those same rules. But, of course, we got some schools out there that have a little more money than everyone else.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is. It's business. It's long overdue. You're talking to somebody who played college football, and I used to watch when we used to try to wait for our little $30 a month check because they didn't feed us on Sundays. So now to see these young men and young women, but young men, since we speak in football, actually getting paid for their talents because you make so much. These colleges they're signing billion-dollar contracts. So you got to pay these young men who are putting their lives on the line out there and infusing a lot of money into the university.
But Doc, how much do you think it's changed the camaraderie in a locker room because guess what? Carson Beck's driving a Lambo. You could be a walk-on or third-string scrub at safety, and you're probably whipping a Corolla.
Well,
the dynamic changes.
Yeah, I tell you this, Bailey. If you're a walk-on, you really don't have much to say anyway. That's just being.
I was a walk-on, and I was full ride by my senior year. So watch your mouth.
No. I have a lot of respect for walk-on football players because I used to look at them and be like, "Yeah, you all doing two-a-days just like us." But you don't reap any other benefits. But you already had a separation because let's be honest, you had cats getting paid anyway.
Well, let's be real. If you have
not in Memphis, not in Memphis. Not in Memphis. Not in Memphis.
If you have $100 price tag, you're worth your price tag, right?
Yeah,
scholarship.
Yeah.
They're not giving you 100% scholarship for you to ride the pine.
No,
it's not happening.
No, that's just how it goes. And you've always had that, but you're gonna always have jealousy. You're gonna always have envy. You're gonna always have that because you have people with alpha mentalities, and I want to be the best player. I want the most playing time, and I want to get paid more. So you have cats talking. I'm gonna get rid. $2 million. To me. 1.5.
Hey, listen to the man, okay? Because he's been in those locker rooms.
Yes.
He's been on that stage. And there's always going to be jealousy because, hey, let's face it, the stars, the better players, they're going to get the most shine. And, back in the day, they got the most benefits.
But I think the crazy thing now is loyalty dead in college football? Before, because you'll know this, like old school was like, you ride it out. I'm gonna stick with this team no matter what. And now it's like we're losing, and they're offering me more money. I mean, I think of like Caleb Downs going from Alabama to Ohio State, and that NIL deal I'm sure was a big reason why, and it's an easy recruiting tactic. Now I do think there's a middle ground in the sense of maybe the players who aren't these big names that can get those type of deals, but then they say, okay, we have a solid team, and if we all stay and we stay in that unison and we decide to ride this, who knows what this could be. but I just feel like that's not the case anymore.
I'll let you have it, Rick, then because I definitely have something to say.
Yeah. Well, as far as like loyalty, you look at the coaches. When they get a better opportunity, sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, look, we had somebody just play for a national championship, and they jumped ship. Okay, and what are the players thinking like, oh, man, we came this close, and see you later, coach.
Yeah.
So I like, why shouldn't the players also, have the same opportunity?
Yeah.
And I put it this way, as far as players are concerned, when you're close to someone in the locker room, especially now. Now, we do have a text group for the Memphis Tigers. Now, cats who transfer it out, they're not allowed on the text. Like, no, you didn't finish. You didn't finish here. But I think now, when you have teammates that you went to battle with, you understand the business of it, man. If you can go get a meal, man, I want you to go get your meal.
Go get your bag.
Go get your bag, man, because we understand that. But now, if you're leaving because you're afraid to compete, we understand the difference between that.
Yeah.
So you're just scared to compete.
Yeah.
So now, if you're afraid to compete, no respect for you. But if you're going to get that, man, go get the money. Go get what you
do you think that? And do you think with that the culture's different? I feel like maybe even 10 years ago, when people didn't want to compete, you would sit there and go, "Well, you're soft." Like step up to the challenge. In today's world, it's like do you feel like locker rooms are holding people as accountable because of how that plays into things?
Well, it depends on the leadership. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, there's no place for softness in football, right?
No, there's not at all. Not at all.
No, but there is.
Okay, all right.
I mean, okay, tell me I'm wrong. Hear me out. Hear me out. Even at the NFL level, there's guys who walk into that locker room just to get a paycheck because it's a big paycheck. Tell me I'm wrong. That's soft to me.
Okay, well,
but once they bust you in your face, that's softness.
Hey, they're not going to get not going to get that paycheck if they go out on the field and they're soft. Yeah. They've got to be tough. I mean, there are plenty of guys. I talk with college guys who are not football fans, right? Yeah. If you start talking to them about the history of football and NFL, and they go, well, I didn't watch a lot of football growing up. And, not just football players, but basketball players. Some of them play because they're good at it. They can get a scholarship, and they can get paid. But that's not being soft, because you still got to be hard.
No, and I guess I'm talking about that's the difference between star players and role players. And you have to have role players on every team. Not everyone's the superstar.
No,
and that's the reality of college football, though. If you're not the star player, you're not necessarily reaping these benefits we even talk about on a daily basis.
Well, that's true, and I get where you're coming from, but because you're like it's emotionally, mentally soft. You're just out there.
Yes, not like physically.
I know exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but like Rick said, you do have a lot of players. They're only playing the sport because they're good at it. They're not academics of the sport. They don't study it. They don't care about any of that. They just can go out there and play. They don't even love it. Yeah. They just have the ability to go play and perform and to get paid. So I get what you're saying, but you have a lot of players like that, but that's just the reality of the situation. Everybody, they're not football historians. It's just like, man, I can ball out. I'm gonna go ball out, man. Let me get paid. Let me get this, and let me get up out of here.
So let me take this another way too. Student athlete. Do we even care about the student anymore? I mean, think about it.
Yeah, you've got to care about the, about the student, because guys have to be smart to realize that, hey, may not make it in the NFL, and if you make it in the NFL, you've got to be smart enough to keep your money. So yeah,
but do you? Let me put it this way: when I was at OSU as a freshman, one of the classes we had was student athlete orientation. They taught us how to write checks. They taught us all this financial aspect. That class no longer exists, okay? And I don't know how many other universities would offer that. But are kids really, teachers, universities really taking the time to hone in and give these kids the resources they need to be successful? So if they do get any money and they can't play professionally, they are set up. I don't know if that's – I have not heard – and we are in this industry of universities that are doing that. I have not.
Well,
and I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
Yeah, at the University of South Carolina, I hear coaches all the time. I mean, like Don Staley, Shane Beamer, Lamont Parrish, the basketball coach, is getting ready for his third season now, and Frank Martin, the previous coach. They always talk about not only preparing these kids for the next game, the next practice, but life, preparing young men to be good husbands, good fathers, to be able to provide for the family. So, yeah, there may be some coaches out there. The only thing they care
Doing
about
the right thing.
is what do you bring to the field? What do you bring to the court? But, again, in the recruiting process, and parents have to be in tune with this, you got to know that they're going to take care of their child. And that's one thing that Don Staley's, and I've heard parents say that about Don Staley. She said, I will take care of your child.
Well, she had that great quote at the ESPYs, too, where she basically was like, how can I ask them to use their voice when I'm only willing to whisper? And I really loved that because it was like, let me be the example for them. And that's just what I hope as we still try and figure out and regulate all this NIL stuff, that we have enough coaches in place that are willing to see just past the money and the winning that needs to happen, which is crucial. Don't get it twisted. At the end of the day, nothing happens if you're not winning. But I also think it's a beautiful thing when you're able to match that with the success on the field with off the field as well.
And it's important, that's why it's extremely important to get to know the coaches and the coaching staff and the athletic administration of the university that you're going to. Because I know it was Memphis State at the time, it's University of Memphis. Now, even now, Penny Hardaway, Ryan Silverfield, University of Memphis, they bring speakers in. Not only do they have class, but they bring speakers in, like during camp, to talk to these young men. And I know Penny brings people in to talk to them all the time about financial literacy, because that's something that, we weren't really taught. But financial literacy, like you said, checking accounts, working on your credit and all those things, and understanding the value of money and building relationships. So it all depends on the coaches and the athletic administration who place emphasis on the student part of it, because a lot of coaches, they couldn't care less about the student part. It's just about, what can you do for me?
I got to recruit.
You got to go to class. Don't forget class. I need you in film sessions.
You got to be self-sufficient.
Exactly. You have to. You have to.
Like at South Carolina, every year they have something they call like the senior seminar, where they bring the senior student athletes in, and they bring different people from the community to talk about careers. And I've been fortunate enough, they've invited me to just about every one they've had. And it's really great to see that. They try to team people up with their interests, so you can give them some real world
experience and advice.
And, you see the kids, they sit there and they soak it up, and then see some of them follow up. Like one of the young ladies I talked with, one of those seminars, and I also went to their ring ceremony the day of graduation. And she comes up to me and she goes, hey, I'm starting work with you on Monday as a producer. And, fresh out of USC.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay. And about a month or two after she started, we were in the pandemic, so it's just like working from home. But she turned out to be one of our best producers.
That's amazing.
And I was sad when she left.
That's amazing.
So, and there are plenty of stories like that. But again, the school, they have to have the right focus, parents, and the students themselves.
There's a big obligation. Commissioner Greg Sankey talked earlier today, and he talked about, he has a student-athlete council. He talks to these athletes about what are their biggest concerns. And they said that every state has different rules for NIL, which rightfully so, because you're not on an even playing field. So they want that even playing field, same standards. Most of the athletes actually vocalized that they did not want to be deemed employees of the university, which I agree. I wouldn't either. You want to be paid for your name, image, and likeness, but you don't really necessarily want to wear that hat. And then the other one was they just want to continue to have great competition, which is all circulating around just the college football landscape that is ever-changing. What do you guys make of? I mean, are we headed to just a super conference and calling it a day?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been thinking about this. Everyone's going, and it's getting real crazy.
It is.
I mean, when you've got Stanford and Cal in the Atlantic Coast Conference, I'm like, they can't call themselves Atlantic Coast Conference. You're the coast-to-coast conference.
Yeah.
So I think what you're going to have 4 super divisions, okay? And, you're going to have all your big boys together, and, the SEC will go away, the ACC, the Big 12, and it'll be called something else.
Yep.
And I don't know. We may see a whole lot of other changes on, like, hey, from year to year, you have to reach a certain standard, or we're going to kick you out
You're
to
booted.
the lower division until you can play your way back in.
Well, you know what? The NCAA may not want to hear this, but I said it years ago, especially now you bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. SEC, especially with football concerned, they can really be their standalone right now and be like, you know what, we're going to have a championship. That's going to be the national championship. We the big dogs in college football. Now what? You know what kind of NCAA, what really can they say? Because that is what it is.
Not to say the quiet part out loud, but is the NCAA even really relevant?
Negative. I honestly, I
They're
say
going to
negative.
come for me, but I don't think they are either.
No, because they've been too quiet for too long and just kind of waiting for things to play, play their way out. And they've just been looking, and it's like, okay, we've waited too long. We need to say something, but it's too late. You've lost, a lot of people have lost respect. Like we're saying, when Nick Saban talks, they listen. When the NCAA talks, people may yawn and look the other way.
And that's a great point, because if the NCAA, let's say it was a person, and they walked in here right now, we'd be like, hey, a couple of years, we'd be like, hey, NCAA. Yeah. Now you'd be like, who?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, SEC? How you doing? How you doing, How you doing, Mr. SEC? How you doing? Yeah. It is. It's the reality of the situation, man. They've lost a lot of credibility and respect. Yeah.
I wrote down some of the things Sankey said that I thought were really interesting. He kind of started his opening statement with, it's time to update the expectation. Do you think, with how things are going for the SEC right now, 16 teams, which he said 16 teams today, 16 teams tomorrow, and he was pressed multiple, 3 questions in a row of does that mean you guys could expand? And he was like, I've made it clear, I'm talking about 16 teams today and 16, very politically correct answer. Do you think the SEC could expand more?
Certainly.
Within the next 2 years?
Okay, well, say 2 years, 3 years ago, and somebody would have come to you and say, hey, you know what? Texas and Oklahoma may be going to the SEC. California and Stanford to the ACC. UCLA, Southern Cal, Oregon off to the Big Ten. What would you have said? Okay, what kind of stuff are you on?
Yeah.
So,
but now it's more likely than not.
Yeah. I think especially, too, if the revenue keeps going up.
Yeah.
Here's my question before we head to break, and then we'll come back and talk about these teams. When you look at these big conferences where they have teams all over the place, Stanford, ACC, that is a lot for athletes. That's a lot of travel. That's a lot. Do you think conferences take that into consideration at all, and or should they?
Well, I hope they take it into consideration, but at the end of the day, because, okay, I was thinking about this. Okay, you take your normal SEC team going on the road like South Carolina. Okay, you travel on Friday.
Yes.
You get there, get settled into the hotel, maybe have a walkthrough, whatever. And then Saturday, you play the game. Immediately after the game, boom, get on the charter and go back. Yep. Okay, now let's say a team from the ACC, let's just say North Carolina, going out to Stanford.
Right.
Do you wait until Friday to go, and then you got the whole thing
with
about
the time change,
jet lag, and everything, and then
you battle what the NFL
come
does.
Back, and the poor kid, they get back late, and they've got in 6 hours they've got a class,
a test.
Okay, so if they really thought a whole lot about the kids and their schoolwork, they'd probably go, this is crazy. Then somebody goes, hey, let's crunch these numbers. We'll figure it out.
And that's why I said you talk about it. You want to hey, let's keep it regionally. We don't want to put too much on them. Then they'd be like, okay,
here's a check.
What's that number? We'll figure it out. It's okay. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it.
It's wild. It's truly wild because traveling is a lot. You guys, I'm sure, travel a ton for work, and you work time differences. I mean, for them too, you have school, you have classes, you have walkthroughs. It's not easy. And, these are college kids. They do have other extracurricular activities we won't discuss. But like in the NFL, it's like, do we get there early and then you risk players going out?
Well, Bailey, you know what? I think what we are with college athletics now, which is good for them, even though you're traveling right now. But like, we got class. What time class? Hey, dog, log me in. Call. Hey, log me in the class. You somewhere? You somewhere at a restaurant? Hey, log me in. Log me. Here go my login credentials. So they can log in from anywhere. They don't necessarily have to be in front of the computer. I'm just being honest about it.
No, and usually I don't know, but when we would go to like tournaments and stuff for Big 12, they would send an academic facilitator, and we would have a study room, and it was like they would watch you take tests and whatnot.
Interesting.
So, but that's women's soccer. We're not football. We chartered once my entire 4 years.
Oh, okay.
So very different aspects.
Well, I know they do have, they have tutors that go on the road trips. You know, they'll have study hall out on the road. Now, when the two of you were in college, did they have people who would go around and check the attendance rolls to make sure you were in class?
Yes.
Yes, we used to have to get something signed to let you know you were in class, and I got in trouble for that quite often because sometimes I'm sleeping.
He was not going to class.
Coach, I'm sleeping. Coach, I'm sleeping.
I would just become friends with them. I'd come once, give them a chicken biscuit, and just say, remember that.
Well, I know at USC, South Carolina, they would have someone who would
attendance
physically go to the class, look, and go, okay. And especially with football, if you're not there, you're going to be running the stadium steps.
Yeah.
I've run many stadiums in my life, and it is not fun. It is not fun. Okay, and on that, we'll take a little break, and when we come back, we will dissect this SEC for the teams that we think might be the top dogs. Stick with us. Welcome back into your Media Day Craze. Bailey Burmaster, Rick Henry, Doc Holliday. Let's talk about this conference. I'm going to read what the consensus, I looked at a lot of preseason polls of what they were. I'll read them off to you, and then we'll just run into it. So Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Mizzou, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Auburn, Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. Is Georgia the team to beat this season?
I'd have to say so. It's hard to go against them, you know, what they've been able to do the past 3 years. And I think if you're going to win the SEC, it's one way or the other. You got to go through Athens and the Georgia Bulldogs.
You have to. Georgia, Kirby Smart, trying to get his third national championship, in 4 years. Just look at the program he's built there. I mean, they're just playing some great football. I think the reason why they didn't win it last year because for some inexplicably they had trouble stopping the run. But they are the big dogs. They are the big boys on top right now, and everybody else has to look at Georgia and try to get through Georgia. So, yeah, they're definitely the favorite to me.
42-2 in the last 3 years. You know, I was not really on the Carson Beck train when they started the season. I wanted to see what he could actually do. Then he played Auburn, and I think he really showed that he could be consistent and sound and go and win them a game in crunch time if needed. I will ride the train this year. I do believe he is the best quarterback in college football. Agree or disagree?
Well, you know what? I really want to see. The thing, when I'm looking at Carson Beck and I see what he, you know, all the yards he threw for and the touchdowns, how can you not say he's not, because he's playing probably the best, he's playing for probably the best team in college football, but it's easy when you have just dogs in every position around you. You mean offensive line.
Everything's easier.
Everything is easier. Tight end, running back, receivers. So not taking anything from Carson, but it's hard for me to put that jacket on him right now because you're surrounded by 10-star athletes, not 5 stars, 10 stars. So, but you can't take anything from what he's accomplished so far and his skill set.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up with what Doc just said about having a star-studded roster. When South Carolina joined the SEC in 1992, they had been an independent. And they'd been an okay program. As a matter of fact, they had their first 10-win season in 1984, and they joined the SEC in 1992. When they joined the SEC, I go, oh my goodness! Right away, I could go, man, they've got so many more good players. And when I look at teams that could make a big run in the SEC, it's like, what is the depth they have with good players? Everyone's got good players, but when your number one guy goes out, can the backup give you winning football? If they can't give you winning football, then
you're only as strong as your weakest link.
That's a step down. And that's been one of the problems with South Carolina over the years. When they're really good, they are loaded. Like in 2011 when they went down to Georgia, and, man, that defense, you had Clowney, you had Stephon Gilmore. They had NFL players just about the entire first-string unit. And when Will Muschamp came and one of the guys from that team had a celebrity basketball tournament, and a lot of the guys from that 2011 team came, and Muschamp came over to me and said, I see why they were 11-2 3 straight years. There's a lot of talent out there. And now when, you know, you're hardly getting people drafted, you're going to struggle in the SEC.
Bailey, you know what Rick is doing. Let's see. They're literally buried. He's trying to knock some of that dirt off South Carolina.
At 13.
They're buried down there. They're buried down there. They're buried down there.
Shane Beamer addressed that. He goes, yeah, you know, I know people are going to, you know, pick us like 13, 14.
Listen, give him his time because we're probably not going to make it to anyone below 10.
I know. That's why I totally understand what he's doing.
All right, so spot number 2, we have Texas. Texas is over Alabama at 3. I find that a little disrespectful to Alabama.
Yeah, but again, people are going, well, you know, they don't have Nick Saban. They had some people transfer out. And so everyone wants to see, okay, what is the post-Nick Saban era going to look for the Crimson Tide?
They still have the foundation, though, is what I'm getting at. And Kalen DeBoer isn't just some random coach they picked up. He's a very signified coach that has the wins and has put the structure in place at Washington, and now is just trying to keep the train moving at Bama.
Yeah, if I'm Texas, I wouldn't want to be picked above Alabama in this first year.
Yeah,
Put us underneath Alabama.
But you see, I mean, you can understand what it is. Look at the season Texas is coming off of. I mean, come on, they were big dogs as well, and you know, I think it would be disrespectful to Texas to put Alabama over top of them because they're like, hold on, because everybody attributes Alabama's success to Nick Saban. Even though he had 10 stars every year, you know, he's still a great coach, but you still have to get those 10 stars able to play, and he was able to motivate them and get them to play like that. But Texas, seeing what they have and seeing all the football talent in Texas and what they got going on, I can understand
Show me
that.
you can do it in the SEC for a second year. And, like, you know, you played really well last year. Show me you can do it a second year in the SEC, and maybe I'll actually believe Texas is back. That's what
We're
I'm
going to
getting at.
find out.
Yeah, quick fast.
Let's talk about the fourth team, Ole Miss. I find them absolutely fascinating, maybe because Lane Kiffin is one of the more charismatic coaches in college football, period. But he's been labeled the portal king of sorts because he got 65 transfer portal kids over the last 3 years. And he really put the Rebels on the map last year. What do you expect from this Rebels team in 2024?
Well, I expect a lot more of what they gave us last year. I mean, it's amazing the rich history that Ole Miss football has, and that's their first time winning 11 games was last season, and they played Penn State in the Peach Bowl and just beat the brakes off of them. Then you look at the players he has back with Jackson Dart, almost 3,400 yards, 23 touchdowns, just 5 picks, a school record low. And they only turned the ball over 7 times, I think, last year. So you got him coming back. You got Trey Harris. I said, you know, Quinshawn Judkins is gone, but they're gonna be riding the Bentley because you got Ulysses Bentley the fourth toting the pill back there, and you got a defense that should be a lot better. So. You know, Lane Kiffin, he's a talker. He's a smooth talker. He may be able to recruit him from WIS to come up.
Yappers these days.
That's how good he is, man.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss, they've been that train coming down the tracks for the past few years.
Yeah.
And, you know, the whistle is getting louder. They're blowing off more steam. And he is the king of the transfer portal. I mean, he took one of South Carolina's best receivers, Juice Wells.
He's going to – I mean, I have a strong feeling this Rebel team is definitely going to be in that 12-team playoff.
Indeed. I mean, you look at some of the people he added, especially on defense. You get the D-tackle from Texas A&M, but Walter Nolan. Come on, man, 6'4", 290. I mean, you got a big dog in there. You got a run stopper. So that defense for Ole Miss, it kind of sucked last year. Let's be honest. So now they should be a whole lot better.
Also, they have a cupcake schedule. Have you guys looked at their schedule? Furman, Middle Tennessee, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, at South Carolina, at LSU.
Oh, cupcakes.
Oklahoma.
South Carolina. Why you doing like that?
I mean, the 14th for a reason.
Oh, my God.
I'm just stating the facts.
Hey.
The facts are the facts.
Could have waited until
At least, I know, man.
She could have done that tomorrow.
In the first segment.
Yeah.
In the first segment.
No, it better be nice. I need him to come back on tomorrow.
Are the Gamecocks still anywhere?
Gosh, man.
Shame.
At Arkansas, Georgia, at Florida, at Mississippi State. So there's some gauntlet schedules. This is by far one of the easier schedules, and it's Ole Miss. So if they can play like they did last year, they should be a shoo-in for that 12-team playoff.
Oh, yeah, they got to take advantage of it.
You have to. I mean, if there's a such thing as having a cupcake schedule in the SEC, Bailey, you really just read one out.
Really
you really just read one out.
I
Correct,
give SEC flowers, but that's
yeah.
Come on. Let's talk about LSU. I find them really fascinating, obviously trying to turn the tide from Jaden Daniels and his Heisman season, and now they have Nussmeier. What do you guys expect from LSU after they were arguably one of the most efficient offenses in the country?
Well, you know what? You can't lose, Heisman Trophy. When you lose a quarterback, you're trying to replace something or someone like that.
But they had Joe Burrow.
You're right.
Many more years
That's
ago?
exactly.
That's crazy.
But how many times do you hit like that? You understand? I mean, you can only hit oil in one spot. 2 or 3 times, I think. I'm not an oilsman, but oil man.
We're in Texas. We should be able to find someone.
But you with the plethora of talent in Louisiana and what they have to pull from, you can never count LSU out, especially with all the players that want to go play there. And like I said, you can never count them out for anything. So you always expect them to replace, but we have to go back to what are the expectations for what are the expectations now for LSU?
Yeah, well, you mentioned, I guess, another generational talent at quarterback. Well, I just looked back at Clemson a couple of years ago. When they had Deshaun Watson, then here comes Trevor Lawrence. Each one of them won a national championship, and both of them, they were surrounded by mega talent. So if you've got all that going for you, then it's like, hey, let's get something done.
We only have so much time left. Very quickly, give me who wins the SEC championship and your dark horse.
I'll let you go first, Rick. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go with Georgia winning the SEC championship, and the dark horse, I'll go with Missouri.
Oh, that's great. 11-2 season last. Yeah.
They beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's who I was going to say. I mean, that's.
Oh.
But hey, great minds think.
Well, I'm
alike.
going with Georgia. My dark horse is it's not South Carolina. You can wrap it up.
Right. Thank you. That does it for your media day, craze.
Oh, man.
Join us throughout the rest of the week. Have a good day.